Nightmares. A series of increasingly dangerous events appear to be connected to people's nightmares.
We open with Buffy, who has seemingly found the Master's lair, but she is easily overpowered.
I thought the cinematography right away in the first scene was a lot better than usual.
And it turns out that she's dreaming.
Buffy's mom says that her dad is coming to visit.
This is the first mention of her father.
In class, Buffy convincingly drops her pencil, and she sees a Joseph Gordon-Levitt-looking kid standing in the classroom doorway.
One of the students in the class opens up his book, and a bunch of tarantulas pop out. And I like how he just sits there and doesn't even use his hands to brush them off, even as they're all crawling on his face.
Sorry about that.
We cut to the Master telling Airplane Kid,
Fear is a wonderful thing. It is the most powerful force in the human world.
Airplane Kid's voice effect reminded me of the genie from the 7th Voyage of Sinbad.
If you'll change.
But then I'm summoned as a slave to do the bidding of whoever holds the lamp.
His voice reminded me of the Borg.
From this time forward, you will service us.
Watch Star Trek: The Next Generation, reversing review videos.
We then cut back to Buffy arriving at school, and I was really confused. Buffy's mom talks about how much she was yelling in her sleep, and I thought that the spiders must have been in a dream, but then Willow and Xander say that it actually happened the day before. I thought they could have been a little clearer with that.
So it's the next day, and then they go talk to Giles about it. Not, right after the event happened. And he seems to have been doing something weird in the back room of the library. Maybe he found Xander's book from that earlier episode.
I was in the stacks. Got lost.
None of them say anything to him about his weird behavior, and he tells them to try talking to Spider Kid about the spiders. When they bring it up to him, Xander calls spiders insects, and Spider Kid demonstrates his advanced knowledge.
They're not insects. They're arachnids.
It turns out that he loves spiders, but claims that they hate him. It's the same old sob story. Kid has huge collection of spiders, kid goes to camp, kid's brother kills all the spiders, and now the spiders are trying to kill the kid.
That's when the nightmare started.
If I had a nickel.
Then for some reason, Cordelia comes by and says,
I hope you studied for the history test.
And Buffy panics because she didn't know there was a history test.
She can't even remember where the class is.
And Cordelia leads her there, which was also weird. She's being unusually helpful.
During the test, Buffy experiences lost time.
And before she knows it, the class is over, and she hasn't written anything.
But she sees the same kid again in the doorway.
Out in the hall, a girl goes for a smoke break in the basement. What a rebel.
And the school rule enforcer encounters her in the basement and gives her the appropriate disciplinary action.
Buffy and Giles go to visit her in the hospital.
The only information the girl can give them is the quote,
Lucky 19.
They find out from the doctor that she is actually the second victim.
The first is a kid in a coma who, of course, we can't see in another hospital bed. I wonder who it could be. Back at school, Mr. Cool is talking shit.
I'm not backing off of this. This is about honor. I'll break his neck.
Then his mom pops out and starts attacking him.
Oh, there's my little baby.
Mom, what are you doing here?
Mom, how's my little booty?
Mom, please don't kiss me for everybody. This is embarrassing, Mom.
Willow and Xander walk into class, and Xander is naked, in quotation marks. At first I thought he reacted overly strongly, then I remembered the lump I got when they beat me over the head with how insecure Xander is in the previous episodes.
Though it was stupid of Xander to show up naked, I'm glad it wasn't his earlier comment about Nazis busting into the school.
I thought that was a really weird fear to give him.
I'm sorry, I'm unruffled by spiders. Now if a bunch of Nazis crawled all over my face...
Buffy goes to talk to Giles, who reveals that he can no longer read. And Buffy finds out from a newspaper article that a local boy was in an accident and is now in a coma.
Lucky 19.
And I wrote the word gasp in my notes.
Then Buffy's dad walks in and says he needs to speak to her privately.
He reveals that Buffy is the reason why her parents divorced. And I'll be honest, it went on a long time and was pretty harsh.
Yeah.
And after the encounter, we see Coma Kid again.
Willow and Xander go to talk to Giles, and they figure out that everyone's nightmares are coming true.
There's a boy in the local hospital. He was beaten. He's in a coma. Somehow, I think he's crossed over from the nightmare world he's trapped in.
And he brought the nightmare world with him.
I like what they cut to right after Giles says,
Everyone in Sunnydale is going to be facing their own worst nightmares.
I don't understand. This can't be happening.
Buffy follows Coma Kid into the gym and tries to talk to him, and the monster guy pops out again. And even though she has a whole commercial break to prepare, Buffy still gets clubbed in the head.
I was a little confused as to whether Buffy was the only person who could see the kid, because that's the way it seemed, and I would have thought at some point someone would have said, hey, why is there a 9-year-old walking alone through high school?
Yeah, it seems a little convenient that just because she's the main character, she's the only one who reacted to him. Giles, Willow, and Xander go to look for Buffy, and I like Willow's reaction when they say it would be faster if they split up.
Faster, but not really safer.
Willow gets talked into the basement, which was kind of silly because she knows what's going on. Turns out her nightmare is performing in front of a crowd, and I did like how the other singer reacted to her not knowing anything.
Xander gets distracted by candy he finds on the ground and immediately starts to eat it.
Because he's 5 years old. During this scene, there were swastikas on the wall, so I thought there were going to be Nazis busting into the school, but it turns out that's not the case.
Buffy talks to Coma Kid, who says he lost his baseball game, and he also says,
He said it was my fault.
They see the monster guy approaching, so they try to run, and suddenly they are in the cemetery at night.
Buffy encounters the Master in this cemetery and is subsequently buried alive.
Turns out Xander was being lured by a murderous clown.
Is there any other kind?
He meets up with Willow and Giles again, and actually manages to punch out the clown. That is the closest thing to a character arc we will get from any of our main characters in this episode.
And I thought that was going to be the start of them all confronting their fears separately, but it doesn't really go anywhere.
Right. They go outside and see the nighttime cemetery across the street, where Giles finds his nightmare. And we get the third birth date for Buffy in this show so far.
Buffy rises from the grave, but she is now a vampire.
They go to the hospital to wake Coma Kid.
And I like Giles' initial plan.
Billy! Billy?
That won't work.
He says he has to hide from the monster guy, who Buffy goes to fight in the hall. Willow looks out the window and sees my nightmare, the world being taken over by a shitty sci-fi channel movie.
Buffy fights and defeats Monster Guy and brings Billy over to confront his fear,
which enables him to wake up.
And of course, right at that moment, Billy's coach shows up and is subsequently jailed for child abuse. The end.
Did he not notice anything weird happening on the way in? There's crazy stuff going on all over the place, and he shows up immediately.
Well, that was a question I had. Would people remember all the stuff that had happened? Because it seemed like the people in the hospital would remember what had happened.
Then Buffy's dad finally shows up, but we don't really get to meet him. What a satisfying ending. Nightmares. Overall,
some heavier themes going on here than what we've seen before. Giant bugs and possessed robots and hyenas are now joined by child abuse. It's not funny. I initially thought Spider Kid was going to be a big part of it since there was so much time dedicated to his whole backstory, and maybe the town would be overrun by giant spiders or something. And the Master isn't even behind any of this stuff, so again we had that whole scene with him and Airplane Kid that didn't really have much purpose. He easily could have shown up only in the cemetery scene, and I think that would have been more effective since it would have been more unexpected. I did like Cordelia's nightmares. It was an example of humor appropriately interspersed throughout the episode. And there had to be someone in town who fought in a war who had nightmares about bombs falling all around them. I thought it was a little budget saving to only have things that were cheap be nightmares. Case in point, those giant wasps. The episode was a good idea, but the execution was just okay. And there were a lot of questions that were not answered. I'm going to give it a C.
I gave it a C+. I thought this was probably the second best episode behind the puppet show, but that's really not saying much. It was a bit dragged out, and even though Coma Kid's story got resolved, it felt like nothing else did. Xander kind of confronted his fears, but no one else got any kind of resolution, and it felt like none of them were really important to the story. Showing us their fears was a great opportunity to add depth to the characters, but they didn't really do that, and by the end it felt like nothing had changed and none of it mattered. This felt like it could have been a generic episode of any supernatural-themed TV show, and what I really wanted to know was whether or not the Master had anything to do with it, but again, that scene didn't end up meaning anything. Overall, though, I would say this episode continued to take the show in a better direction than it appeared to be heading a few episodes ago.
I would agree.